John here, and today we're going to talk about a review, First Blood Part 2. And I know you can't see the poster, but this is the complete collector set, which has the first 4 Rambo movies. And this one, to me, is a great sequel. Definitely another classic, in my opinion. But this one here, so the story, John Rambo is serving time after the events of the first movie. He's in this, labor camp prison. Colonel Trotman, Richard Crenna returns as Colonel Trotman here. He visits Rambo and offers him a chance to be released from prison. The mission is to infiltrate Vietnam to get photograph evidence of POWs. And that's when soon we're introduced to Murdoch, played by the late Charles Napier. And then when Rambo goes on this mission, he soon finds himself behind enemy lines. And that's the plot here to First Blood Part 2. But like I said, this one to me is an action classic. And it was directed by George Cosmatos, and I know there's always been that thing of, did he direct this movie or did Stallone direct this movie? That's something that I really want to get more into in like a separate video, like a longer discussion, more in-depth discussion. But George Cosmatos, he before directed Of Unknown Origin, later on directing Leviathan, which is a great movie. The film was written by Stallone and James Cameron. And I know one idea that was talked about for this sequel, and I think there's like a script out there, and maybe Studio Red Band, Matt Thomas, if he's watching, he can elaborate more on that. But I've heard before, like one of the ideas or scripts that they had in mind for this was that, Rambo was going to have a buddy in the film, and that character was going to be played by John Travolta. And again, maybe somebody, whether it be Studio Red Band or Jack Craver and anybody on there can elaborate more on that. That would have been interesting. But yeah, so Stallone and James Cameron provided the script here. And the cast here, Stallone, he returns as Rambo, and, we see him in the beginning in this labor camp prison. Trotman, meets Rambo at the gate, and he offers him an opportunity, to be freed if he does this mission. And Rambo's like, do we get to win this time? Which is a great line. And, Stallone does a great job here, and, and we'll talk about the action here in a little bit, but, definitely the character is turned up a notch here. Where in the first movie it's more about the story, if you want to say, it's more story focused. Here it's more about, the character of Rambo, being dialed up a bit more, more larger than life, and more, if you want to say, comic book like. But, Stallone does a great job. Richard Crenna as Colonel Trotman does a great job again. And that character is definitely given more to do here. There's more meat on the bone with this character. And again, he has great lines, like in the first movie. The scene in here where he's talking to Murdoch about, Rambo, and, Murdoch is questioning, can Rambo pull this off? And Trotman's like, what you call hell, he calls home. And I thought that was a great line. Of course, Richard Crenna could do it better than I can, but, what you call hell, he calls home. Charles Napier, a great actor. He's Murdoch here in the film. He's a CIA operative that is very smarmy and only cares about, the profit side of things. And Charles Napier does a great job, playing this character. Another character that, you love to hate. And Charles Napier, you've seen before. He was in Silence of the Lambs. Yeah, he's been in so many movies and TV shows, and like I said, unfortunately, he's passed away. You have Martin Kove in the film. Yeah, from The Karate Kid, Kreese. He plays the character of Erickson, who's a pilot for Murdoch, his right-hand man, so to speak. Steven Berkoff is in the film as Lieutenant Podofsky. He's this ruthless commander. who's in command of the Soviets in the movie. Yeah, Steven Berkoff. Julia Nixon as Ko, who's a freedom fighter that would come in later in the film. But, great cast. Everybody does a great job here. And like I said, the character of Rambo is definitely dialed up a bit here. Jerry Goldsmith, he returns to provide the score, and it's an exciting score that definitely gets your blood pumping. It really elevates the movie here. Jerry Goldsmith, he's missed. I really miss Jerry Goldsmith. He was a great composer. Now, like I said, he does a great job again providing this score. Other things to mention, and to me, what really works about this movie, Rambo being the jungle. It really fits with the character, being in Vietnam and on this mission to, not just photograph POWs, but he's going to go in and rescue them. But, there's a scene where, Murdoch is, he knows that Rambo's got a POW and he aborts the mission. He leaves him behind and he gets taken by the Soviets in the film. And you got scenes where Rambo is, being tortured by Podolsky. And you got that great scene where, he calls back to base and he's like, let me talk to Murdoch. Murdoch, I'm coming for you. And it's such a great moment. And yeah, and then later on, you have scenes where, Rambo is picking off the Soviets one by one. And that was great stuff. Where he hides into the mud wall and just taking out people, left and right, and, using, the C4 tip arrow explosives. When people, like that lieutenant in the film, played by George Chiang, he gets killed with the C4 tip arrow explosive and he blows to shreds. And you would have Rambo a little bit later, destroy the POW camp and he frees the POWs. And then at the end of the film, Rambo comes back to the base and he shoots up the base, shoots up the computers and confronts Murdoch. And then the film ends with, Rambo and Troutman having a talk, and, Troutman's like, how will you live day by day? And you have that great song at the end, Peace in Our Life by Frank Stallone, which I think got nominated for a Razzie. I don't care about the Razzies. To me, it's a good song. I like the song. And, Frank can sing. And, yeah, so, then I know I didn't really go in depth here with this movie. Like I said, I want to save that more for like a longer discussion and what have you. But this is a film that, to me, and, I mentioned some of the, highlights here. Stallone as Rambo is great again. The action is exciting. When it happens, it's all practical. Explosions, real helicopters. Everything is real. Everything is tangible. And you just don't see that nowadays. Now it's a lot of, CGI shortcuts, green screen, comic book. Back in this time, because this film made a lot of money. This film was a big hit. Yeah, I think it was the second or third biggest hit of that year. And I don't know. And I know maybe I'm just remembering the past here. But, what happened to movies like this? Movies like this that are just full of adrenaline, that everything is real. The action is top notch. The action is tangible. It's practical. Whether it be practical gunplay, practical explosions, a real jungle. I just remember the scene where, Rambo takes out the people on the boat. And, yeah, you have Rambo and his environment. And like I said, being in the jungle fits with the character, and so much more. Now, like I said, I know I didn't really go into a whole lot here with this review. I want to save that more for like longer videos. But yeah, this movie to me is a great action movie, and yeah, it definitely personifies what was great about that time period. This is right smack in the middle of the 80s, and it definitely, I mean, it is the gold standard of 80s action. I mean, the same year you had Commando that came out. And, that year of 1985, you had this film and Commando, but I think, like, didn't Chuck Norris had, like, 3 films that came out that year? Missing in Action 2, Invasion USA, and Code of Silence, I believe. Didn't all 3 of those come out that year? So Chuck Norris was on a roll. You had Jackie Chan, Police Story. Police Story came out that year. So what a great year for action movies. And yeah, like I said, this is definitely the one action film that is the gold standard. It is. When I think about 80s action movies, this movie is at the top. Commando is right behind it. Actually, one may argue Die Hard could be that first, like the one on top. But I love this more. I love Die Hard. It is on that echelon. But this, for me, whenever I think about that era, whenever I think about 80s action, this is number 1 for me. So, with all that being said, let me get to my final thoughts on First Blood Part 2. John Rambo becomes larger than life in this second installment. Excellent score by Jerry Goldsmith, entertaining action scenes. First Blood Part 2 to me is the gold standard and quintessential film that embodies 80s action. And out of 10, I'm going to give First Blood Part 2 a 10 out of 10. But thank you for watching, and stay tuned for my review of Rambo 3.